Okay, in respect of everybody's time, we're going to call this Senate Insurance and Labor Committee meeting to order. I've asked Chairman Robertson to say a word of thanks. What mic you for? Five. Thank you.
If you'll bow your head with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings you bring into our lives each and every day, Lord God. We pray that you remind us, Lord, each and every minute of every day what our role on this earth is, and that is to care for humanity, Lord God, before we care for ourselves. We ask these things in your precious name. Amen.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome to everybody to this first Insurance and Labor Committee meeting. I want to thank my fellow members for being here. Thank Chairman Walker and Senator Harbin for their roles as Vice Chair and Secretary. We have Kai here from my office. It's new in that role and has to take care of Senator Walker and myself. So bless her. So we probably need an extra prayer for her, Chairman Robertson. And we do have a new person in from Ledge Council here, Ms. Crittenden. And I think we have new Senate research. Let me say your name again. Jocelyn Hill. Thank you. Welcome to the team. I would say that we have a huge crowd because Chairman Albers is presenting the bill, but understand there are no other committee meetings here today. So sorry, Chairman Albers, you're absolutely. Yes.
Make a motion to get
You're stuck over there.
Here he is. It's your call. Yes, sir, it is.
We thought you might want to sit by him, but I should have known better.
We spend enough time sitting next to each other in class.
All right. Today we are going to evaluate Senate Bill 330, which is LC number 432085, and Chairman Albers is presenting this bill to us today. Just so you know, there is a fiscal note in your packet, and the floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Burke and esteemed members of this committee. I'm very proud to present Senate Bill 330, the Giving the Gift of Life Act, to you. I'm going to give a quick introduction and an overview of how we got here and then take you through the bill. This is a very personal story to me that you all have heard before. Sitting next to me, my son, Will, back in August of 2020, was rushed to the hospital and we almost lost him. One of the most helpless feelings a parent can ever have. Thank God the doctors and nurses and staff at Cherokee Northside Hospital, though, were able to keep him alive. And from that, we learned, though, that he was in full renal failure and had to go on dialysis immediately. It's a very difficult time for Will and certainly our whole family. And we learned a lot during that process of what needed to be done. And then thankfully, on July 21st of just this last year, just over 6 months ago, thanks to the wonderful doctors at Emory Hospital Universities and their medical staff, we successfully took a kidney from me and gave it to Will. And we sit here today 100% healed, in great health and in great spirit. What we found along the way, though, was others who are experiencing the same problem didn't have the same benefits that we had. My wife, Carrie, is with us here today. My wife and I are fortunate to be well-educated, very type A personalities for those that know us, as well as we know an awful lot of people. But this is a very difficult and very emotional process to get through. To be candid with you, I knew literally nothing about donating a kidney, donating organs, or anything they like. And I've served as a firefighter, an EMT, and paramedic for over 3 decades. So what I've learned from all this is God called us to do something with this experience. And I believe very strongly that our calling now is to help encourage people to become living donors, those who need organs, in order to put themselves forward to get their medical conditions under the right control and the right process so they can receive these much needed life-saving organs. I don't believe in coincidence either. Just to give you an example, once we found out about Will's diagnosis, we found out one of our closest friends, Kathy Starr, was actually on the list herself to get a kidney transplant, which she got about 6 months before we did, myself and Will. Then we found out a good friend of mine, where I'm on the fire department, who does our fingerprints, he got a kidney donation from one of our 911 dispatchers. And then in another non-coincidence, one of the people testifying today, my friend Mike Lalo, who is a lieutenant with the New York Police Department, he and I had worked together for years where we did a Patriot flight where we brought our first responders to New York City in order to celebrate their service and sacrifice. And then he himself became a living donor and took over the National Kidney Donation Organization. And last, I want to mention, we had kept our story quiet, only to a handful of family and friends, until a few weeks before our surgery, when Will said to me, he said, "Dad, maybe we should make our story public." And I was surprised, him being more private than I am. He said, "Wouldn't it be better if more people were praying for us? Wouldn't it be better if others were encouraged to do the same thing that we're doing?" 13.5 million people viewed that post on LinkedIn all over the world. We had people on the wall of Jerusalem praying for us. We have people inside St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican praying for us. We had mosques in United Arab Emirates. We had Buddhist temples, every state and almost every country you can think of. The outpouring of support was unbelievable. But then it was the unique stories. When I was on a Facebook video chat with a woman who was my exact age, who had a son, Will's exact age, who had just given a donation to their son a couple months earlier in Australia. And then the list went on of people who were helping us. But then it changed. Now we're helping people all the time. Just a couple of days ago, Will and I are on the phone with a family in Sandy Springs. Their son, also named Will, just got on dialysis and going to need a transplant. And this is a very difficult thing to navigate. So we knew what our job was in order to help them. I want to thank all the people that are here today, both in person, as well as I know many had to join us via live stream, working with the great hospitals, Emory and Piedmont, our foundations, which are numerous, and the families that got us here. This bill is going to save people's lives. Thousands of people will be alive if we pass this legislation. And this will be one of the few times ever in my legislative history that I will tell you, not only are we going to save people's lives, we're actually going to save money at the same time. Let me take a moment to take you through this bill and what it does. Section 1, pretty straightforward. It's simply giving the gift of life act, which is what it is designed to do. The second part of the bill is something I've worked closely with the National Kidney Foundation. I want to thank them for their incredible support, both at the national and local level, where state by state, they are doing legislation just like this, which says a life insurance company cannot cancel nor deny life insurance to people like myself who are living donors. And that could be through a kidney or a liver. Knowing, and I'm glad we have a couple of our doctors here with Dr. Kirkpatrick and yourself, Mr. Chairman, that know that this has no impact on our livelihoods at all. We do not want to discourage anyone from donating. The second part of the bill really is Section 3, which is the current tax credit. While I was going through the process of learning about becoming a donor, part of that multi-days of doing tests, I got to meet with a social worker to tell me about the process. And she said, and thanks to the Georgia State Legislature, there's actually a tax exemption available you can apply for. And I kind of smiled. And she said, "Oh, do you have a connection there?" I said, "No, just keep talking." That was done decades ago. And $10,000 decades ago is not what $10,000 is today. It's also a process by which you have to make an application. This flips it to a $25,000 credit. There will be a cost to the person that does this. And I want to make sure there is no barriers whatsoever. If you're thinking to yourself, are you incenting someone to do this? You're darn straight I am. I want to give people every reason in the world to help save somebody's life. Section 4 is another key component, which is for people like myself and Will. This gives employers up to 30 days or 6 weeks of time to be able to compensate and pay the salary of the person just as if they were there, so they don't have to take FMLA, disability, all their paid time off, or even in some cases have lost their jobs by doing this. 6 weeks is kind of the standard time, 30 business days, because that's a time that you can't lift or do anything. Now, for me, candidly, I was back to work in 1 week, maybe not against all the doctor's advice. But a lot of folks need that extra time. And what I want to do is make sure that we're helping businesses to help their employees in order to be successful transplant donors and recipients. And then Section 5. This is a little unique because most of our bills typically go into effect on July 1st of the year we pass it. And that is true for Section 2. But for Sections 3 and 4, which is for the tax credit, as well as the additional credit for employers, we're pushing that till January of 2023 in order to give the folks in Department of Revenue of the place just a little more time to get that system set up and ready to go. As the chairman mentioned, you have a fiscal note in front of you. The total potential impact of this bill is $1.7 million. Now, let me give you some interesting facts. The average cost of someone living in renal failure is approximately $250,000 a year, every single year. This is my multi-million-dollar son right here that we've been through. After a transplant, that cost is less than 1/10, typically $15,000 to $25,000 a year. So we can do the math pretty quickly. It's $62 million in savings just based on the analysis of how many people they thought they'd have in the fiscal note. Now, I don't know about you, but for $1.7 million investment to get $62 million back, I wish I could get those kind of returns. And here's something that's more specific to government. More than 80% of the costs that go into helping somebody through either in renal, liver failure, et cetera, dialysis, et cetera, is covered by Medicare and Medicaid, which is our tax dollars. So this is a direct return on investment to the people who pay the bill. In summary, Mr. Chairman and committee members, right here today, we can take the first step on literally saving people's lives. Also, we're going to be doing a series of public service announcements to encourage people to get more actively engaged and involved in this process. And as I mentioned earlier, I can't imagine too many times I would sit in front of you and say, you'll save somebody's life and save money all at the same time. That is the Giving the Gift of Life Act, and I would yield to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see. Chairman Kirkpatrick, your light's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Albers, I'm very familiar with your story, and I commend you for taking a personal story and turning it into legislation. And I learned that from you at the very beginning, that that's how a lot of our laws come about. My question is, you limited this to kidney and liver transplants?
No, ma'am. If you will look at, I think it's under section 3, lines 33. It's things such as liver, pancreas, kidney, intestinal, lung, or bone marrow. And that's in accordance to the National Organ Procurement Act.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure because the technology changes every single year.
Absolutely.
I want to be sure we don't have to come back and change the login. next
And,
year.
and Senator, I appreciate that. And, and if innovation continues to come up, I'll look forward to working with you and the rest of our doctors in the caucus that can really make these things a reality with me. Thank you.
Senator Harbison. is that
Yeah,
you?
thank you. Senator Alves, I just wanted to really commend you for such a courageous thing and such a great thing you did for your son. And that's just wonderful, a godly outcome. I'm just really proud of you. But also the bill you offer, I'm just really grateful that you brought it forth. There's a lot of people who are families that are impacted by kidney failure, and it's very prevalent among African Americans, especially very prevalent. And I worked on that committee with the foundation several years ago, and you can't do enough. So I just want to make sure that you know of my appreciation for what you're doing. I know people who are on dialysis and things like that, and it's a great challenge for us to reach out and try to solve some problem. But I just want to commend you on a great outcome, but more important, on a great effort and a great bill. Thank you.
Chairman Harbison, thank you for your leadership and your friendship.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Merritt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Albers, I so commend you for what you've done. Like, I have 2 children myself, a son, and Will, it's a pleasure seeing you here and that you're doing well. And, what wouldn't we do for our children? We give whatever we could to save their lives. So I want to thank you for this bill. And I thank you for how it will change the lives of many families. And to that point, I just want to make sure that we are not excluding anyone or making sure we are having opportunities for all families to be able to take advantage of this. So I have 2 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
The work requirement concerns me a little bit. Would the working requirement exclude people who are working like 2 or 3 part-time jobs? Because that is a reality for many right now.
Certainly.
And
Okay.
you have no predetermined date. So that's my first question.
Yeah. So for the work requirement, it's not a requirement to work. It's a requirement that, not a requirement. It's an option for the employer to say that I want to help out. And in this case, it would be Will and I,
Mhm.
right? And I can apply through the state to get a tax credit so they can cover and pay us our normal salaries just as if we were at work
Okay.
during that time. Doesn't matter whether we were part-time, full-time, anything. It could be any part of that, right? It's really to encourage the employers to be a part of the process to help out both the donor as well as the recipient.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So you're placing that on the employer for that work requirement, not the actual worker. Am I hearing you
Right.
correctly?
This gives the employer that ability to do that, right? They can apply for the tax credit. Now, some employers, I do want to say, Senator, have already done this on their own.
Okay.
Right. They have, there's a few PACs out there that have come together and people have accepted challenges, which you can do with a certain size company. And if you have the wherewithal, some companies just can't afford to do that. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to provide them a vehicle to do that in order to help out the process, if that makes sense.
Okay. And my second question was the Medicaid portion. You said Medicaid can be used to pay for some of the services here, what we're asking. What
Correct.
about those in that insurance gap that don't qualify for Medicaid or Medicare?
Sure.
How would they
So
take advantage?
this actually doesn't specifically cover their medical insurance. It was more the reference for how the return on investment works. When folks are in renal failure, as an example, you can apply for Medicare at any age. In fact, even at Will's young age. Others are getting Medicare and Medicaid, other people using a combination of that and private insurance. So this doesn't actually talk about that necessarily in the bill. It's just what the return happens to be by getting people transplanted and the benefit to doing that. But I will encourage everyone who might be listening, and if you ever have a constituent, I'd love to help you. There are ways for those folks to immediately apply for Medicare if they have this process. And that's part of the things that I'm doing now. I have joined the board of directors for the Georgia Transplant Foundation and others to help coach people through that process. Thank you.
Senator Harmon, did you have your line on?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Senator Albert's great job. And Will, you're going to owe him greatly, more so. But I talked to your dad when that was going on and when everything, and I was just really proud and for that to work out. What a great bond that you will have in that respect. What I see here, this does not deal with medical insurance really at all. I don't see that at all, which was one of my questions because of non-ERISA plans and ERISA plans. As I understand it, it would not affect the donor as far as life insurance. That would become statute in Georgia where you could not be turned down or rated or postponed because you donated a kidney, if I'm correct.
Exactly, Mr. Chairman.
And then the other part is there's a tax deduction for the donor and there's also a tax deduction for the employer. And I just said, is it a tax credit or a tax deduction? Because the two are different. I see it. I've seen different words. Do you know off the top of your head? I was going to ask you that.
Yes, absolutely. So let me just, I'll get you to that section, which is in section 3. So the way it works today is it will be a credit on their taxes up to $25,000 or $25,000 straight, not up to. Where today, as an example, I would apply for it and I'd put all the information as to why. This is just going to be the straight credit. So at the end of the year, when you do your taxes, you'll obviously, depending on how much taxes you may or may not have paid or owed, that'll be a benefit to the person who's donating. And again, in all the thought process there was to encourage more people to do that. And look, it's going to take obviously some time, energy, and resources to do that, but I want to give every reason in the world for someone to want to donate.
Right. And that would be a state income tax credit, not
Correct.
federal.
That's right. Yeah, we can't, in fact.
Right. I understand that, but great job. I think it's a very non-intrusive. When I say non-intrusive, it's to get people to help themselves and it opens it up for the donor. It opens up the employer, and the industry should be not discriminatory towards anyone who has one kidney or otherwise. But very well done, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing this legislation forward. And I want to let both of you know that y'all's hair looks great today. But my question was running along the lines of Senator Merritt. No employer, private employer, would be obligated to take the tax credit. And they would not be prohibited from requiring the employee to operate under existing company policies. Would that be correct?
That's correct. This is simply a tool they can utilize if they want to.
As an additional benefit for recruitment, retention, or whatever, and just show that they were a caring company. But there's no way we could fence in, if you would, a private employer to make them allow one of their employees to that was offering the gift of life to actually follow any portion of this legislation. Is that correct?
That is correct. And you know, we can't do everything legislatively, but what my goal is to break down those barriers to give everybody the reason why they should.
And that's exactly right. I think we were kind of thinking along the same lines that there will be those individuals out there who wouldn't necessarily qualify under this legislation, but other things such as you were talking about, state and federally funded insurance programs and other things that do offer avenues for individuals who need kidneys and pancreases and pieces of liver and things of that nature. So, and again, thank you both so much for the courage that you've each have shown through this process, but a very heartfelt thank you to your wife and your mother for standing with both of you as y'all went through this and being the backbone of the Albers family as y'all powered on. God bless you all three.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And one more question I just thought about for many Georgians, many business owners are self-employed. Would the credit apply to someone who's a self-employed person, works for themselves? Are those credits, would they be available? Just curious on that situation.
You know, that's a very good question. I think as long as they are organized as an LLC or LLP or corporation, yes, that would absolutely fall into this.
So I think that helps small business. If that's true.
Absolutely.
I think it's a good.
And really, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for bringing that up. And that was really one of my reasoning for wanting to get this in here. A very large company that's doing well does have the wherewithal to do this, right? But our small businesses sometimes can't afford to have someone out for 6 weeks at a time. And again, I want to break down those barriers. So
Okay.
thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, now, you know, I remember when I first got here, some wise person, and I can't remember if it was Leader Chance or not, but said, you know, when things are going your way, sometimes it's best to kind of get out of the well. And we've got 6 people here that you've invited to testify, and I certainly want to hear from them, but I do think we want to make sure we keep a quorum. So if your folks would be brief, and we will then see what the will of the committee is. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, I'll ask Will to speak first. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all for hearing me, and I promise I'll be brief. If you would have told me at 25, they would have handed me a Medicare card and I would have woke up with 3 kidneys, I would have laughed at you. But here we are. So I'm here because I'm lucky. Like you heard, my mom and dad were here for me, the doctors and nurses at Emory. But more importantly, I lived 30 minutes away from 2 of the best places in the country to get a transplant. I worked at a job where I could telework. They never fired me. They paid me my full salary. I'm here because my parents were able to take me in, and I never had that financial burden. So, you know, I'm here for everyone else. I'm here for that nice person that I met in the dialysis clinic that's exhausted, that just wants to play with their grandkids. Hey, I'm here for that kid, Will, who has a full, scholarship to Alabama, but doesn't know if he can take it because he can't, lift things on his own. And I'm here for that, the family that we met at a foundation whose daughter laid in Showa for over a year and never went home. So I'd be more than happy to take any questions.
All right. Thank you for being here, and we appreciate your eloquence. I don't see anyone with a question. If y'all want to step back, and we'll get the other folks up. Mike, Lola, is that correct? Thank you for being here. You have the floor, but get close to the microphone if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'll keep my remarks very brief. I want to thank the Georgia Insurance and Labor Committee and Senator John Albers for inviting me to speak today in support of Senate Bill 330, Giving the Gift of Life Act. My name is Michael Lalo, and I am president of the National Kidney Donation Organization, the largest living donation advocacy organization in the country. I am also a member of the American Society of Transplant Community Advisory Council. On December 19, 2018, I became a Good Samaritan donor when I donated my kidney to a stranger while working as a detective within the New York City Police Department. Today, as we sit here, there are 116,962 people on the national wait list waiting for a life-saving organ. 97,781 are waiting for a kidney. 3,984 live in your state. Sadly, 22 people on the national list died today waiting for an organ. 13 of them were waiting for a kidney. 13 people are going to die today. 13 people are going to die tomorrow, and so on. Those that chose to give the gift of those that chose to give life, even after their death, help contribute to removing people from the wait list. But that program is not enough to tackle the growing number of people added every year. This is why a bill protecting organ donors such as SB 330 is so important. There are only 18 states in the country currently have some form of legislation protecting living organ donation, and I'm hoping that Georgia could become the 19th. This bill is a start to help remove disincentives for living organ donors. My organization speaks to thousands of people considering living kidney donation. We also speak to many who selflessly have already donated their kidney. Of those that we've spoken to, 80% say they've had some form of financial burden due to their donation. This could be lost wages, travel and lodging expenses. This should not be the case. The National Kidney Registry offers a program called Donor Shield, which already addresses these financial concerns and other disincentives living donors face and solves them by offering protections to living donors at no cost to the donor. But this program only covers about 25% of the living donors in the United States. We all need to support and protect all living donors. If you look at living donation from inception until the end, the donor is the only one not receiving any tangible or financial support. The recipient receives a life-saving organ, The hospitals and medical staff receive compensation for the procedures, and the insurance companies are no longer paying for the dialysis treatment of a patient in kidney failure. It is estimated that a single living kidney donation has an overall savings to our society of $1 million. We need to do more to protect, support, and encourage living organ donation. There are 209,128,094 adults in the United States. Last year, 5,969 living donors donated a kidney. Only 383 were Good Samaritan donors, meaning they had no connection to the intended recipient. Why are these numbers so low? Two reasons. First, I believe that the majority of the people in the United States just don't even know it's an option, that they can even do it. Second, our country is placing an unacceptable financial burden on living donors. We need to eliminate the financial burden placed on living donors. We need to do better. This bill and the opportunity for me to speak here today are helping address both those issues. I'd like to thank all of you for inviting me here today, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions today or in the future.
Thank you for your testimony. I don't see any questions. Appreciate you being here. Matt Wayne from Emory. And if you could tell us what your role here is in addition to where you're from.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman and Senators, thank you for having me here today. My name is Matt Wayne, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Executive Officer at Emory University Hospital. And I also just take a moment and just thank Senator Albers for his commitment to the citizens of Georgia. And frankly, also as a parent, and as Senator Merritt said, I think we'd all do whatever we could for our kids. And it's great to see Senator not only talking about that, but living it very profusely for all of us. And it's very much praiseworthy. With that in mind, I think one of the things that and why Emory Healthcare supports this bill is one of the few things we all get to collectively do in which your constituents are our patients, our families, our neighbors, and our colleagues. It hits any facet of what we do as a healthcare organization, or for that matter, as one of the largest employers here in Metro Atlanta and in Georgia. And so the ability for us to give the gift of life together is very profound. And it's one in which we work every day to help families heal, to take care of others, and to give them hope. And this bill does all of those things. And it does all those things in a way that's responsible and that we can be very proud. I think simply put, that's a tremendous reason to support this legislation. And I appreciate your thoughtfulness as we go through it. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you for being here. I don't see any questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Christina Klein from Piedmont. And next on deck is Josh.
We come as a duo. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Christina Klein, and this is Dr. Joshua Wolf. And we're from Piedmont Hospital Kidney and Pancreas Transplant Program, and we're so privileged and honored to be here today. Essentially, I'm really proud of this legislation and the work that Georgia has done to support kidney transplantation, liver transplantation, pancreas transplantation, and heart transplantation in our country. And Georgia has a longstanding reputation for being dedicated to supporting organ transplant. Between Emory Hospital and Piedmont Hospital, last year we did almost 800 kidney transplants and pancreas transplants. And that is really remarkable considering that there's about 20,000 kidney transplants performed in the entire United States in that same time period. I am particularly devoted to living donor transplant, and I want you to understand why living donor transplant. So when a person comes for a kidney transplant evaluation now, and they're an O or a B blood type, and they're placed on the deceased donor waiting list, they still can wait up to 6 to 8 years to get an organ offer. And when they get that organ offer from a deceased donor, there are not that many people that donate their kidneys as a deceased donor that are healthy. Obviously, they died for some reason. And we take kidneys from imperfect people to use for organ transplantation. So for example, if you're a deceased donor and you have hypertension or diabetes, we may still use your kidney if we feel that that kidney would be still useful in another individual. It's not the same thing for living donors. So for living donors, we take people that have very minimal health conditions and we use their organs. And because it is a scheduled surgery, the kidney is taken from a healthy person and directly transplanted into another person. those kidneys last almost double the length of time that a deceased donor kidney lasts. So there are great reasons to support living donation in particular. You avoid a person waiting for 6 to 8 years on a deceased donor transplant list. You give them a kidney that is almost guaranteed to last nearly double the amount of time than a deceased donor transplant would last. And from the recipient standpoint, and from a financial and public standpoint, you're really avoiding them re-entering that cycle of Medicare and Medicaid and that is associated with being on chronic dialysis. So living donor transplant is important to the recipients, it's important to society. And also I want to point out that when living donors come to us and they want to be evaluated, they oftentimes are not thinking about their own medical risks, right? And think about facing surgery. Some of you have never had surgery before, some of you have had surgery before. But the living donors that we see, oftentimes the surgery is not what's on top of their mind because they've already committed in their heart to giving a kidney to somebody. But I will tell you that financial disincentives make it impossible for some people in our country to donate. And that is the truth. And programs like the National Kidney Registry Donor Shield, which was mentioned earlier, by reducing financial incentives to donation, you do promote organ donation and make it possible for people that want to donate their kidneys to give their kidneys. And we know that that works. So we're fully in support. Dr. Wolf is also one of the living donor transplant nephrologists with me, and we'd love to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
I just want to throw a quick story, very short. About 3 hours ago, I just evaluated a woman who wants to be an altruistic donor. And I told her that I was coming today to testify on behalf of this bill. She is a single woman in her 40s, works in HR, and I told her about this opportunity and her eyes just lit up and you could see the relief on her. Another thing about altruistic donors as well, like this woman, her donating a kidney is not going to lead to one transplant. She will be able to donate her kidney to a list of people who are not compatible with each other. So for instance, she can donate her kidney to someone, let's say in Minnesota, and then that person will receive her kidney. Their incompatible donor will donate their kidney to someone else and so on. So her altruistic donation here in Georgia could lead to decreasing costs for people across the country. We could go on and on. I'm going to be brief, but there's so much power with living donation that is even outside of the scope of this bill, how it's going to affect people even outside of Georgia. And by doing this, I hope that this will be a leader in promoting this to additional states as well.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions. Chairman Robertson.
Briefly, doctors. I know we're talking a lot about kidneys, but donation of a pancreas, is that a full donation of the organ? Is that done? Is that a death donation? And if so, under what are the normal circumstances in which a person would receive a pancreatic transplant?
Right, so people receive pancreas transplants for two reasons. The primary one is for type 1 diabetes, where their pancreas does not produce insulin, as opposed to type 2, which is insulin resistance. And then some people have received a pancreas transplant after a total pancreatectomy for chronic pancreatitis or trauma for a reason like that, after which they do become a type 1 because they don't have a pancreas making insulin. I will say that pancreas transplant from living donors has been very limited throughout the United States, as far as I'm aware, and our program definitely does not offer that. I do not think Emory does. And it is done through a partial pancreatectomy, so it's not a whole organ pancreas. The primary way that pancreas transplant is done is through a deceased donor whole organ pancreas, with some centers doing islet transplant as well.
And just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I notice it seems in certain communities, there's been an uptick in pancreatic cancer. And so do I assume that those individuals would not necessarily qualify for a transplant because of the fact that their existing pancreas is cancerous?
That is correct. And the one organ that transplant can be used for treatment of cancer that is included in this would be liver cancer. So certain liver cancers, if they meet certain criteria, you can treat that with a liver transplant, but not so with kidney or pancreas.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
You
You
didn't
asked
know
me a
you were
medical
going to be.
question. I'm more
Yeah.
comfortable now because you asked me a medical question. This room's kind of intimidating.
You will be surprised at how hard it would be to teach these members anything. So thank you for your attempt, though. I appreciate that. Dean Harbison, do you have a question or is that?
Yes, one question. Before we get to the transplant phase, is it something peculiar to our area, the water perhaps, that contribute to kidney failure? And is just a combination of things, medical problems or the lead in the water or something like that? Where are we with that?
Well, I do. That's a really important point. And, in our area of the country, and I would also extend this to Alabama, Mississippi, we have higher than usual rates of end-stage kidney disease and chronic kidney disease compared to other areas of the country. And some of that is genetic related. Some of that is access to care, socioeconomic reasons. And, that also affects our donor pool. And I think that that's important to point out, just because when you think about getting a deceased donor and you wonder why it takes so long to get a deceased donor in states like Georgia and Alabama, it's because the number of people with kidney failure on the list is high, but also the number of candidates being deceased donors in the hospital is relatively low, because a significant number of people that are dying in the hospital have some element of kidney disease that makes their organs unusable. So you have that huge gap, whereas you don't have as big of a gap in other areas of the country.
All right, last question.
Hopefully my chairman's not going to get mad at me for asking another question, but when I did my transplant rotation down in Miami in a year that I won't name, the transplant patients still had a heavy burden to bear because they were on a whole lot of medications on a daily basis, and very hard to keep track of. I know that that's advanced a lot. And is there much of a medication burden for transplant patients afterwards still?
Right. So transplant recipients, if you receive a kidney transplant, generally they're on 3 different types of anti-rejection medications if they're on a prednisone containing regimen. And then they take a period of anti-infection medications, usually an antibiotic antiviral, for 3 to 6 months out from transplant. And then for kidney patients, most of them have hypertension, a significant portion have diabetes. So that's a continuation of their other chronic medications. I would say on average, our patients are on 10 or more medications. So yes, it is, when you see the handful of medications, that's what our patients are taking.
Yeah, it requires a real big team effort. We're very fortunate. I can tell you at our center, we've got 4 excellent transplant pharmacists, 6 transplant nephrologists, about 8 transplant surgeons, pre-transplant coordinators, post-transplant coordinators. It's a big operation. I know Emory is very similar as well, because I'm talking with them, but it does require a big team effort to make sure that a lot of these individuals can keep track of and stay on top of their immunosuppression, antihypertensive, and oftentimes diabetic medications.
Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you.
Dr. Frida Fisher and Tiffany Mcclure is on deck.
Hello, I'm Dr. Frida Fisher. I'm an MD who has been triple board certified in nephrology, internal medicine, and pediatrics. And I'm so pleased to be here today. The Giving the Gift of Life Act. There's no better name for that. There's no better gift than life, a gift that crosses all party lines, all color lines, all gender lines. When I was first doing my MedPeds residency at Georgetown, it was actually my goal just to be a good old primary care rural physician. I want to go back to a town like where my grandmother lived, where she raised her 16 children, and just be a good old primary care doctor. But somehow I fell in love with the kidney for so many reasons. And that actually led me to Emory, where I completed my fellowship, and I've been on staff at Emory Midtown ever since. The gift of life is indeed profound, and having seen so many people receive kidney donations and just seeing how it increases their chance of life, of enjoying life, of living a longer life, that's been such a profound thing to witness. But even more profound is witnessing how many patients I have who die from not being able to have access to either receiving a donation or not being able to afford to leave work or to have that chance of life insurance being denied so they can afford to give the donation, which is why I'm here to support this bill because it's so very important. There's countless numbers of patients I've seen die even before the pandemic, but certainly since the pandemic, we know that kidney patients, especially dialysis patients, are more at risk. And I just attended a funeral last week of someone who was very young, who was one of those people who died while waiting for a kidney transplant. Absolutely. Kidney patients or patients who actually want to donate to give that lift should have an incentive. There is no way that what is true of a 2015 study of living donors that found that of the people who donated kidneys, 25% were actually denied life insurance or they were penalized if they tried to change life insurance. That absolutely makes no sense at all to disincentivize someone who wants to give the gift of life. And so again, I'm proud to be here and I'm so grateful to Chairman Albers and to his son Will for being here and for recognizing something that's so important. One thing I heard from both of them was that yes, of course, they're pleased that they were able to give, support each other, give the gift of life, but they kept recognizing that they were lucky, that they were blessed, that they had the education, that they had the resources. But what this bill does is that it reaches out to those who aren't so lucky, who don't have privilege, who don't have the education, and allows them to give the gift of life to their loved ones just as much as someone who has greater access. I thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm very happy to take them.
Thank you. I don't see any, but we certainly appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
And if you're looking for a rural job, then you just raise your hand. I've got a position open in Southwest Georgia. Hey, it's a challenge. We have to take these opportunities when we get them. Absolutely. All right. If you'll tell us who you are again, who you represent, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Tiffany Mcclure. I am not a politician. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm someone who on January 4th, 1 year ago, donated my left kidney to a 14-year-old girl I'd never met in Illinois and moved to Georgia 6 weeks later. I heard about Senator Albert's story after I moved here, and I reached out to him to ask if I could share my story with you today, because this legislation we are asking your support on, it is so needed and it affects all of us. All of us. See, my story is a bit different from his. In June of 2020, a friend's niece who I'd never met underwent kidney failure at age 14, the same age as my own daughter. I'd never met this child before. I barely knew her mother. We were friends through school. And I knew my blood type was that of universal donor, and I raised my hand. I didn't raise it lightly. I didn't think, hey, I feel like donating my left kidney today and what's for dinner tonight. I researched the heck out of it. The pros and cons. I saw what other donors experienced. I read about what I could expect, what life changes would have to happen. And then I found people who had donated and I spoke with them. And the stories were terrifying. Life insurance dropped. Having to use all vacation time to save somebody's life and then going without pay when a personal emergency happened. Discovering jobs in jeopardy because of the time off needed to heal. Because make no mistake, donors do heal and we heal wonderfully, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And I was lucky because I was in a job where I could work remotely. And yes, I went to work 6 days after my surgery from my bed because I couldn't afford to take any time off. But I did what I did so a teenager could have her life given back to her. And to this day, exactly 1 year later, when people hear what I've done and they talk about doing it themselves, the one thing I've realized is the biggest obstacle facing people who want to donate, who are healthy enough to donate, who are physically able to donate. It's not the long recuperation time. It's not the fear of the surgery. It's not the concern about going under anesthesia. It's losing their job. It's losing their insurance. It's losing their paycheck. This bill could change all of that. Now, I lost my best friend over 5 years ago and her heart beats in somebody else's body because she was an organ donor. I can say my kidney is helping somebody else out there as well. Because and I know you've heard this, but organ donation is not just about us. It's about the lives we will change that we will never meet. It's about siblings, parents, grandparents, families, and friends of people we will never know, who will have their entire lives given back to them. And passing this bill gives so many more people a chance to make that change. I came into this world with 2 kidneys. I will leave with 1 because I was never all that fond of my left kidney anyways. I'll leave with the knowledge that that kidney is making a difference outside of my body. Now, I did have the opportunity to meet my recipient the first time the night before my surgery. 14-year-old Cara and I met, we laughed, we shared stories, and the next day we shared an organ. And I'm pleased to report Cara and the kidney formerly known as mine are doing absolutely fantastic. They have an enthusiasm for life, a zeal for every day that is lived, and my kidney likes her a lot more than it ever liked me. Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to report that my kidney got to go to homecoming last fall. Please support the Giving of Life Act. The very name says it all. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Can't believe my committee acted up and had a spontaneous. Thank you. I knew I had some folks that could keep their composure here, but that was a very good. If the folks from the different foundations don't sign you up as a spokesman, they're not very smart. That's all I'm going to say. But thank you for being here. Appreciate your testimony. Chairman Albers, do you want to wrap up briefly?
Mr. Chairman, after that, I think I'd just like to say I'd appreciate your favorable vote. I don't think I can add anything more to the wonderful testimony of today.
All right, thank you for that. Appreciate that. All right, committee members. Chairman Walker.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I move to pass the Giving the Gift of Life Act.
Let's see, that would be LC 364877, Senate Bill 331, and I'm going to represent or let Senator Harbison be the second, since I heard his deep voice first, since I can't hear high-pitched voices very well. Is further discussion about this measure? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise their hand and keep it up until Kai tells us she's counted. Looks good. Thank you. Let's make the record show that was a unanimous vote. One quick question for you. Do you want to talk about your other bill, or do you want to save that for our next meeting, considering the time today?
I believe it could be brief, and we have several folks who would want to just say something, but they promised me they would just be very brief and just all in support. So, or I believe they're all going to be in support. I'm watching.
You're pretty brave.
Uh,
Well, that'll be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We'll move forward. As long as we can keep a committee, I told the members this will be a hearing only, and we can decide on our action at the next meeting. Okay.
Perfect. Yes.
All right. So this is Senate Bill 3. Which one?
331.
331. Yeah. LC 364877.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm going to be a little bit quicker on this one. This is the Protecting Georgia Business and Workers Act. It's very straightforward. We have had a couple of areas of our country, not here in Georgia, thankfully, where local cities and counties have started to implement their own labor laws. And I'll give you an example. Someone who might clean hotel rooms for a living, if they cleaned a certain amount of square foot, local government said that they should then get paid double time or more. Now, it didn't matter whether that took them 2 hours or 10 hours. It was being based on something that was arbitrary. Same thing goes for a software coder. You coded more than a certain amount of lines of code a day. Again, didn't matter what took 1 hour or 12 hours. We are the #1 place to do business, thanks to all of us here in the legislature, Governor Kemp, and all those that came before us. This just makes sure that our labor laws stay where they're supposed to stay, which is at the state and at the federal level. And there's no issue with putting any concern any undue burden upon our employers who are really the lifeblood of Georgia, especially our small and mid-sized and then large businesses. And that's the bill in synopsis. Mr. Chairman, I yield for questions.
Let's see, number 10. Senator Merritt, is that you?
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. So I'm always a little concerned when I see these local control bills coming across. So I guess my question to you is, do we believe in local control or do we not? I see you're protecting the interests of, I guess, businesses. But we've had instances or cases where, you know, especially in light of the pandemic, where we need some local control measures and we need our local governments to make certain decisions based on work needs. So that's just my question. Do we believe in local control or do we not? And why would we introduce a bill that would undermine that?
Well, thank you. I firmly believe in local control, but we actually have separate levels of government for good purpose. While we have a federal constitution, a Georgia constitution, we have charters for counties and cities for what they're to do. And in most cases, that has been the rule of law for a couple hundred years. Unfortunately, some folks have taken that out of context now and gone to a place it was never intended to be. So it's not necessarily about local control. It's making sure that each one of us stays at our lane and does the appropriate level of government. Thank you, Senator.
Yes, just curious, or kind of an issue that occurred in one of our local counties during the pandemic. We found that the city was passing regs affecting that, which were not statewide, and putting down businesses or not allowing businesses to open that would have been open if they had not been in that city. That's what I would see this bill is, protecting businesses that are being shut down by local governments that are not overridden by the state law that are federal law that's involved. Am I correct?
It would cover all those things. And I probably failed to mention, Senator Merritt brought up a good point. I actually talked to our friends at GMA, the Georgia Municipal Association, which are in support. So again, this is the consistency to make sure we understand what everybody's roles and responsibilities are. As you can imagine, to Chairman Harbin's point here, let's say you own a business that's in 5 different counties, and into that there are 4 different cities. You can't have all different labor laws in each one of those areas. That's why those things are governed at the state and at the federal level.
Senator Sims, is that you? Number 12?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, are there any GMA representatives in the room?
Brian is here.
Well, let's hold on. We can get him
Okay.
to testify in just a second, but if you have a follow-up, that'll be fine.
Thank you. But we're looking at this as situational. At least I'm looking at it as situational. You're talking about a couple of 200 years. We've had legislation in place or whatever's written up in the Constitution. But recently, in the last couple of years, we've had a pandemic that said we had to make adjustments in order to protect the public. And those adjustments were, in a lot of instances, life and death adjustments. So I don't have a question. That's just a statement because I'm going to vote the way I want to vote. But I would like to hear from those officials that have to protect local entities and my local constituents at the proper time.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I can
thank
just
you.
clarify this. This may alleviate some of the concerns that Senator Sims or Senator Merritt have. If you look on line 46, where begins just any change in this bill, this is particular to changing the ordinance, purchase agreement, contract relationship for scheduling of hours and regulating employees during work hours. It's nothing else, right? This is just, again, saying, I'm going to use the example of, we can't ask someone who cleans hotel rooms that you can just do it by the square foot. We pay people by the hour, or we pay people on a salary, depending whether you're an exempt or a non-exempt employee. This is just saying we're not going to throw anything arbitrary in that for other purposes that isn't germane to what they do. That's all it is. So I think I just don't want to confuse the issue. It's not what you might be considering. This isn't something to do with a mask mandate, as an example. It's nothing to do with that. Thank you.
Any other questions? We've got a couple of folks signed up to testify, and we'll let the GMO person, since there was a specific question, go first. You'll introduce yourself to the committee. I would appreciate it, since I don't have your name.
Chairman Burke, members of the committee, my name is Ryan Bowersox with the Georgia Municipal Association. We appreciate the opportunity to come and speak on this bill today. I did speak with Senator Elbers earlier today, who explained the intent of the legislation. We have absolutely no issues with his intent behind this legislation. We are just working to ensure that the specific language used would not interfere with the local government's ability to contract with a private business for purposes along those lines. We're continuing to look at the language and appreciate Senator Elbers' continued work with us. But again, with the intent of the language, we do have no issues with it.
Okay, thank you for being here. Let's see, is that Senator Sims? You have a follow-up question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So presently, this is a bill that is continuously being studied.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator. We are evaluating the specific language used in the bill just to make sure there is not an unintended consequence on our ability to contract or go through a purchase agreement with a private entity, and just making sure that there isn't something that is not the intent of the bill of Senator Elbers that would interfere with us.
So when will we get some clarity on this bill?
I will work.
Are you all still working?
I will feverishly work with Senator Elbers quickly here to try to get any changes that we would suggest, if that's okay with you, sir. Thank you.
And just to remind everyone, this is just a hearing only. We're not taking action today. Okay, thank you for being here. Appreciate
Yes,
your
sir. Thank you very much.
being available to answer my friend's question. John Gerard, is that right? You write like a doctor, John.
I blame technology for that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I understand.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. I promise to be extremely brief. My name is John Gerard. I am Director of State and Local Affairs with the American Hotel and Lodging Association. AHLA is the largest hotel association in the United States. We have over 30,000 members, which accounts for over 3.2 million rooms that are represented here on the national level. Thank you very much to the distinguished chairman for his support of this bill. He did a fantastic job of giving a synopsis of it. I just would like to add that the hotel industry, upwards of 90% of some of these hotel brands are franchised locations. So they are owned and considered small businesses. So this type of legislation is protecting a large amount of small businesses, including 57,000 employees who are under the hotel and lodging purview as employees here in Georgia. So with that, thank you very much again to the chairman. Thank you for the Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association, who we've been working very closely with on this issue, as well as the Georgia Chamber and Metro Atlanta Chamber. So at this time, I will answer any questions if available.
Okay, you do have a question? Senator Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry to keep, but I hear you say protecting the businesses. What about the employees that are working there and those individuals that are customers or clients of the hotels? What are we doing here?
Yes, and thank you for the question, Senator Sims. I think, one of the surveys that was done in terms of daily cleaning, and I forget the name of the actual survey company, but I'll give it to the committee at a later time. They found that 65% of individuals, in terms of having this daily cleaning coming into rooms, actually didn't like the daily entrance into their rooms. They wanted it to be at the discretion of going down to the front desk and speaking to the members, and a majority of them did not want daily cleanings at all. So they are trying to work with and keep employees safe as well, but I do understand your concern. Thank you, Senator Sims.
I always want a clean room.
And I completely understand that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
All right, now, I didn't know the Metro Atlanta Chamber had an individual named Metro Atlanta Chamber, but that's what it says here. So y'all can self-identify and let me know who is representing the Metro Atlanta Chamber. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chamber.
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It's like one of us could be here today, so hence the language there. But
I understand.
thank you for the opportunity. So just for clarification, I'm Marshall Guest with the Metroland Chamber, not Metroland Chamber with the Metroland Chamber. But we want to commend Senator Albers for bringing this legislation forward today. He actually brought it to us this summer and we had a chance to review it. And we appreciate the opportunity to do so. But as a business community, we've become increasingly concerned with what we are seeing occur in other states. And that's with the adoption of various labor laws. This legislation, as Senator Albers discussed, would create the uniformity and certainty across the state in which many of our businesses operate by preventing local governments from implementing those local labor laws and instead keeping the regulation of our labor laws at the state and federal levels. Of course, I think you've heard us say this many times, but a uniform and predictable business environment is key to our ability to continue to foster the environment we're now, which is one of the best states, the #1 state to do business. And so for these reasons, and with the testimony given by Senator Albers and the previous speaker, we encourage this committee to support this legislation at the appropriate time. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to this committee today.
Thank you. Chairman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I realize this is a hearing only, and I guess I could ask the senator offline, but I'll ask it here. I think that I understand the intent of this. I think the chairman that presented the bill said it's not happening in Georgia yet. So I can't really think of exactly an example of what might happen, but I just don't want there to be any unintended. Do you see, I guess my question is, do you foresee any kind of legitimate reason, like a public safety reason, that a government would want to regulate an industry that said maybe promised food delivery within 15 minutes or your food's free, or I mean, I really can't see a legitimate reason, but I wonder if there would be one. I think about what we had to see in the food processing industry with the meat packers and poultry packers. They had to slow down their assembly line, basically, or their processing line, because they had to spread out their employees during COVID. But that wasn't a government thing, I don't think. I don't know, or it might have been a federal government thing. But I don't want to. The code seems pretty strong already in Georgia, saying that local governments can't dictate wages and benefits. I mean, that's already in the code. This seems to deal more with output or production.
Right.
And I just, is there a legitimate reason where a local government might, for public safety, need to be able to do that? But
yeah, Senator,
it's
I'm
kind of a contrarian. I don't know. That's just what popped in my head. So
yeah, Senator, I'm not aware of that. I would defer to Senator Albers, but I would note, I mean, I believe it was this committee back in 2017 adopted similar legislation, the same code section that dealt with a similar issue, but this seems to build on that and continue to provide that certainty that would exist for businesses to operate in a uniform basis across the state.
Thank you. I don't think we have any more questions. Appreciate you being
Thanks, Mr.
here.
Chairman.
No problem. Nathan Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Humphrey with NFIB. We represent small business owners here in the state of Georgia. And I'll keep it short. All the points that have been made previously are very much in line with what our members believe. We've actually polled, we ballot most of our legislative issues here at the Capitol that we engage in, and 82% of our members responding to that ballot question said they were in favor of this legislation. So appreciate your favorable consideration on that. As was mentioned, uniformity and predictability is a big deal for a business owner when you're trying to make decisions and run your business successfully. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges right now in the marketplace for small business owners. So appreciate your consideration.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you being here today. No, nobody has any questions. Chairman Albers, you want to sit back? Appreciate the work you've done on this bill, and I guess I would ask you to continue those conversations over the next week with the GMA and answer the concerns that my vice chairman has.
Mr. Chairman, might I just have 60 seconds to wrap up? Before we
Absolutely.
close? Okay, great. Thank you.
I was about to give you that.
Oh, all right. Great questions from all. I think one of the questions brought up, which was important by Senator Sims, is not only do I want a clean room, but I want a clean towel. But part of the things you mentioned seriously was about protecting the customers and protecting the workers. It does both those things, because what we don't want to do is force employers to start cutting people's hours. And that's what exactly happens. This is happening in other areas of the country, and it's happening in one of my favorite ones to pick on, because they're awfully easy to pick on, and it's the state of California, where businesses are closing down left and right. People are leaving the state in magnitudes, and businesses are just shuttering their doors. We want to be anything but California. It's creeping up the West Coast and other places as well. It's important. Chairman Walker, you brought up great points. It's actually, this is completely different. This just says that you can't regulate those hours based on anything but working by the hour. It doesn't go into private contracts and like that. I understand what your thought process is, but this just says is you can't arbitrarily start picking things to say that it's done by the job versus what it does by the hour. As an example, if you are going to have someone who was picking apples off of trees, you can't say after the third bushel, you get paid double time. It just says that you're going to get paid for the time you work, just as anybody else would. And if you worked 8 hours, you get 8 hours. If you work 10 hours, 2 hours would be overtime, just like we do for all our normal federal and state laws. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to follow up with everyone individually or together. And I think you'll see there's even more support from chambers and business organizations throughout the state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have a very, very brief question.
We're from Southwest Georgia. You know, nothing's brief down there. I love the United States of America, regardless to what state it is, whether it's California, Alaska, or Georgia. My contention here is we protect our citizens, we protect our workers, we protect our business people as well. And as we sit here, we want to make certain that, well, and let's look at Georgia. Right now, the entire US, there are so much more help wanted ads than there are, we're going to get rid of you because of. So we have to be very, very careful about how we position ourselves as legislators to deal with local matters, because we should all work together, whether it's local, state, or federal government. All of us are in need of each other at this point in time. Small businesses, large businesses, all of us. So just wanted to make that. Was that brief enough?
That was pretty good.
Thank you.
For you, that was excellent, excellent. You're my friend and always will be my friend, even though you like my brother better. Okay. You got any closing remarks?
Very, very briefly, I would say, remember these three numbers: 6.2%, 6.4%, and 6.6%. That's the unemployment rate in California, New York, and New Jersey, who have adopted many local labor laws, who have given a disincentive to business. And because of that, they have recession level unemployment. And just a couple months ago had depression level unemployment. Georgia has 2.6% unemployment, one of the best in the nation, and by far the best of all the large states. And that's because of the leadership of Governor Brian Kemp, this legislature, and others. And what we don't want to do is to fall into that trap. And this keeps us on the cutting edge of making sure we're doing right by protecting Georgia businesses and workers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank y'all. This meeting is adjourned. I appreciate everybody's attention.